Well, welcome everybody to episode 2 of Dungeon Masters Anonymous. I'm Kyle Rudge, I'll be host. In episode 1, it was great. We started our campaign builder. We went through the first of 12 steps, which we'll get to again, and we have yet another DM guest. But first, we will do our 12 steps. Last time, we had step number 1, which was we admit that we are powerless over the dice and their ability to tell the story better than us. So step 2 in Dungeon Masters Anonymous is this. We have come to believe that there is a greater power in a story built together than one done on my own. Welcome to Dungeon Masters Anonymous. All right, we'll kick it off with some introductions. We'll start with our guest, of course. That's over to my left.
Hello there. My name is Mike Perna. I am out of the wonderful state of New Jersey here in the States, beneath most of you Canadian fellas. And I am the president and founder of an organization called Inroads Ministries, and I am a DM.
Hi, Mike.
You know, you warned me about it, and it's still...
Gotta do something. Gotta do something. All right, who's next?
Oh, hi, I'm Justin, and I'm a DM.
Hi, Justin.
Thank you. Do I have to say stuff about myself? Or...
No, not really. We know who you are.
It's anonymous, Justin. My name's Seth, and I'm a DM.
Hi, Seth. And last but least, for sure, I'm your host, Cal, and I'm a DM as well. Wow, you guys sound so depressed. Come on. We're talking D&D for the next 2 hours. We can't be sad about this. We'll kick it off. We got questions for our guest, but actually, Seth, you're going to answer some of these ones too. We'll start with you, Seth. Seth's one of our co-hosts. He didn't make it out to episode 1 because he got called away on some other business, which apparently is more important, but whatever. So, Seth, tell us a little bit. How long have you been a Dungeon Master, and what are some of the systems that you use, prefer, and why? Give us some info.
I'm trying to think when I started DMing. It was probably about 6 or 7 years ago I've started DMing. And I started cutting my teeth on... Actually, the first thing I ever DM'd would have been the original version of Ninja Burger, which is a fantastic... Ninja Burger? Have you never played Ninja Burger? It is like one of the most fantastic games ever. And
That is a blast from my past, man. Holy cow. Ninja
highly
Burger.
recommend it. And then I went from there to D&D 3.5, and I played 3.5, 4, and 5 now.
And I've also played Call of Cthulhu and DM'd it. It was fantastic.
So, Ninja Burger, Call of Cthulhu?
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu.
Is it Cthulhu or just Thulu? I've never
It's
quite known.
Cthulhu. I don't know. It's Cthulhu in Saskatchewan.
Now, is it is it Bahamut or Bahamut?
Neither of those are right.
It's Bahamut. Bahamut.
There you go.
Thus, we open the debates.
Oh man,
We just fought about this for like most of the episode last time. So.
Bahamut.
it's funny because I totally saw a webcomic this last week that discussed exactly the thing we were arguing about.
Oh, man.
Mike, you're up. New Jersey, my friend. All right. So, how long you been a DM, and what kind of systems have you done in the past, and what do you prefer? What do you do now? What's your thing?
I've been playing role-playing games for a long time. I've been playing since I was 16, so that's years. But I will say that I've been DMing probably for about 10.
Okay.
I definitely was one of those guys who I played, and for the longest time I thought I would never be able to DM. Like I had this vision of what DMing a game must actually be like, and it kind of kept me away from being behind the screen. Now that I've been on the other side, I'm like, man, why did it take me this long?
What kind of systems? What have you played in?
Mostly these days, I am playing Numenera, which is from the Cypher system, from the folks at Monty Cook. If I'm not playing Numenera, I'm playing D&D 5th Edition. I play Victoriana, and I've technically I can't say it's a DM game, but a game that I have absolutely fallen in love with is a 2-player a DM-less role-playing game called Reflections, which I will highly recommend to everyone.
Ooh, I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to look that one up. Tell us a little bit about Numenera then. I know you love Monty Cook games. They've been so good to you.
I do.
What's unique about Numenera? What's unique about it?
The thing I love about Numenera, one, I love the setting because it's a setting where it's Earth, but it is a significantly long portion ahead of the timeline of Earth. So the continents have reformed back into a Pangea-like state. The setting is referred to as the Ninth World, and the reason that is because we are currently living in the First World. Our civilization has risen, and in this setting has fallen. And humanity is the reigning populace in the First World and the Ninth World. But all the worlds in between that are visitors. They are alien races, so you get a whole bunch of crazy technology. No one knows exactly when it was that the aliens flooded the world with nanomachines, but they're there, and there are a select few people who actually know how to manipulate those. They're referred to as nanos. It's this weird combination of very feudal-like structures with it's super technology, not even technology, like craziness. It's kind of a similar vibe to something like Shadowrun, where you've got that combination of magic and technology.
Yeah.
But it really goes. It's not so much that there is magic, so much as it falls into the Arthur C. Clarke auspices that technology will advance so far that it will eventually become indistinguishable from magic.
Ah, okay.
So that's the kind of world we're living in. We're not talking about elves and everything like that. Humans are humans, but it's a world that has enough that's similar to ours now that we can kind of feel at home. But at the same point, there's so many mutations and there's so much time that has passed that it's completely indistinguishable from now.
All right. Well, moving on to our questions of the week. This week's question is an interesting one. This one talks about the idea of the characters that our players have made that we, as DMs, just end up loving. Now, Mike, I know you play, and I thought of this question. I want to ask it specifically because I saw you posted a picture. It was like of a red tiefling bard.
I did. To be clear, I didn't create that picture. I Googled that sucker. But
and then the story that you attach, you're like, I need to make a character, and this is the story. I'm like, I like that. I want to play that character. I'm not going to do it justice.
To actually getting him to the table.
I'm not going to do it justice. So is it a tiefling bard or a ranger?
He is a tiefling bard.
Okay.
I have always, anybody who listens to our podcast, anybody who listens to anything that I talk about knows that I have an unnatural love for everything that is the bard. It is bar none my favorite class to play in D&D, and I've always been drawn to bards that aren't typical bards. The guy that has become my mascot, he's literally to the point where the new podcast that I just started called the Bard and Bible, like the reason that the logo for that is a dwarf with an axe guitar is because of the fact that I have my dwarf bard named Drogan Anvilsong, who's become my mascot. And I always say that he wasn't your typical bard because he was quicker to put his axe in your forehead than sing you a song. But D&D 5th edition came along and they're like, oh, by the way, we're going to make that not weird anymore. Like, people are doing it. We might as well make it a thing. So now there's bards in the College of Valor.
Yeah.
And so Battle Bard is now a thing. And so when my group that I've been playing with these guys for like a decade or so, and they're like, hey, we're coming to the end of this campaign. You know, we're going to move into the next one, and the next one we're going to do Ravenloft. And so I said, okay, I know the Ravenloft vibe. I know what we're going for here. And so I love character creation. It's probably my favorite part of playing in role-playing games. And so I'm like, I have this idea, and it's this idea of a tiefling bard And the idea being, I wanted him to be kind of a monster hunter and lore master. I wanted him to be the kind of guy that you send in to fight the beasts that no one else wanted to. And there was a phrase that crept in, and I'm like, okay. And the second I got this phrase together, I knew I had this guy down. He had a name at that point. He had everything, because tieflings, apparently, if your tiefling has kind of rejected his infernal roots, they pretty much kind of take a new name that is like their ideal.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
his name is Hunter. And the phrase that Hunter uses is that people always like to send me after to go fight the beasts, because at the end of the day, no matter how the battle goes, the world is short one monster.
Yeah.
And needless to say, I'm super excited about getting that guy to table.
I like that. I'm super prone to the weird races, goblins, the tieflings, the hobgoblins. That's all my thing. So that was really cool. I know for me, I had a player. He had never played Dungeons and Dragons before, and so his idea was he's like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, and so I'm going to build something simple as he can. And so he's like, okay, I'll go half-orc fighter. So super easy. He's like, low intelligence score, that way I don't have to be expected to do a lot of things. And
I hit things.
Smash.
Pretty much. And so, but he gave himself a trait, and his character's story was that he came from a violent tribe where his brother was like a giant warrior and would constantly beat on him, where he called himself the orc who only loved. And so he was a half orc fighter, pretty much pacifist. So,
That's amazing.
Undermines the only thing he does well.
and so we get into the first battle, and it was like, because like a few people hadn't really played before, so I'm like, okay, arena battle, and here's like 4 little like dog-like jackals that kind of come out, and like super easy to kill. Like this was not going to be a challenge battle at all, just to get the idea of rolling and turn order and those types of things. And he rolls super high in his initiative. He's ready to go, and he's like, okay, can I make it to the first jackal if I like, walk up to it? I'm like, yeah, you could totally make it. And then you can attack. And he's like, no, I want to reach down and pet it and see if I can make it my friend. I'm like, okay,
Yes.
animal handling
Yes.
check, and he's like, okay, and of course he's taken proficiency in animal handling, and so I roll, and he's like, natural 20, and I'm like, oh no. Like, you know what? Okay,
Ends
let's
the fight.
let's go with this. I'm like, okay, he seems amenable to you, and then he rolled another nat 20 on his next turn to befriend it. I'm like, okay, fine. And so I just tore out the little monster card I had. He's your pet now. We'll deal with it.
That's amazing.
And so from then
Oh my
on, he had
goodness.
this pet dog named Stinky, and so oh, it was so good. They would go into fights, and like if he ever got provoked, he had this 2-handed maul, and he would just like deal so much damage. But more often than not, he'd be like, "I'm just going to protect the person in the back." Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's one of my
fantastic.
player characters that made me love the game even more. We'll go with our guest, Mike. Do you have a character one of your players created that you think really outshone the rest?
I had a couple that really that have stuck out to me. Probably the one that first came to mind when the idea of sharing characters came about was a character that was actually created by my brother. And my brother's great because he's the kind of guy that you wouldn't think that he'd be into role playing, but dude, get that man into the table.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it was in Victoriana. So Victoriana, I often describe, for in case you've never heard of it, it's basically steampunk Shadowrun.
Okay, yeah.
So the mechanics are very similar. It's that idea. It's that mixture of fantasy races in a technological space. And so he created a halfling slumlord. He took some of the traits that he took was basically he wanted to own a building. So he owned a building in Cheapside. So he had people. That was his income. He rented apartments to people. His weapon of choice was a cane, and he had a collection. He had a collection of walking sticks and canes. and there was a bar that he would walk into, and everyone knew who he was, so imagine this halfling, this tiny little dude, but ogres were running in fear of this guy, and I absolutely loved it. And the crazy thing is that at one of the I'm sitting there and I had this climax because one of the traits he took, one of the complications he took was he had an evil twin. And so there was another one of him running around that it was kind of that situation where he had a brother, but he knew not to trust him, but it's his brother, so he can't not. And so his brother gave him a lead on the case that they were working on, and it ended up he was completely set up, and there was a person there ready to jump him. My brother takes his cane, and it's a game where it's not just success or failure, it's success and then critical success, and there's levels. And so his weapon was a blunt weapon. It's not supposed to kill, but the book said it's like if you just completely overwhelm him, you're gonna just you're gonna crush his skull. And so my brother just rolls like a champ. Just dice are exploding everywhere. He just caves this guy in, and I loved it because I'm trying to hold myself back because he goes, I'm gonna search his stuff, and I go, you find a detective's badge. And that scene culminates in this standoff when he walks out of this abandoned building and just cops everywhere. I'm like, bravo.
Oh man! All right, Justin, you're up. Character that a player's created that has stood out to you.
Man, I'm sorry. Like, this is gonna sound terrible, but I can't. The only thing that comes to my mind are really bad examples of characters.
The ones you don't want to talk about.
No, like I'm honestly like racking my mind. Like, there are a lot of like pretty good ones that I'm thinking about, but like they're all like, yeah, okay, like I don't know, I had family problems and now I'm here to work it out. One of my players played a what was it again? A Bullywug rogue.
Sounds like my kind of player.
In 3.5, I think.
Frog rogue.
My goodness.
And just role played the way too hard on being a Bullywug, and like didn't cooperate with the party and was like really like interested in like, oh man, what are classic Bullywug things again? He wanted to defect to another group of Bullywugs that they were fighting or something like that. It was not a good time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Takes a special person to play a monster race well. All right, Seth.
Yeah,
Seth, what do you got?
That's a self-compliment there.
Oh man, so I got two examples, and for different reasons. So the first, I would say, I have a guy that I've played several different games with, and I've DM'd games for him, and I've played alongside him, and he's always, almost always, at least up until this point, had just played like frontline meatheads, right? Just like big brutes with an axe, and they just chop things, and he'd always rush headstrong into stuff. And so I was running this game, and he said, I want to try something new, and he wanted to be a warlock, but at that point, several of us had kind of discovered that the thing we loved most about our characters were all their weaknesses, right? Their strengths were pretty cool,
Of
but
course.
it was the things that like nearly killed us or endangered the party that we loved the most about finishing a round. So we wanted to be a warlock who didn't quite have control of his powers yet, and so we did some tweaking, and basically this warlock had his powers forced upon him unwillingly, and he didn't really know how. And a side effect of that was every time magic was used on him, he would have to roll a percentile chance that he might go into basically a barbarian rage, and he would have to release his eldritch power no matter what. And so, which included if he was healed by his cleric, which was always scary, because he'd be like, I'm really hurting, I could use some healing, but we're in a tunnel, and I don't have anywhere to aim if this goes wrong. And so the worst was he aced he aced a critical NPC that they were like escorting, and he just one-shot him to death because he had died, and they resurrected him. But in that, they triggered off his rage, and he just like sat up and just zapped this guy with an Eldritch Blast and reduced him to dust. And they're all like, "Oh no!" So that was a super creative one. The other one I remembered playing that was actually a fantastic character was we were in the middle of a campaign, and our DM had to buy some time to prep. And so we'd come up with this one-shot backstory of one of our characters. So we all had these temporary guys. I wasn't DMing this one, but I ended up playing a wizard, and my friend was playing a sorcerer. And we just got into like immediate banter of who was the better spellcaster.
Of course.
Right? And it's like, I can do whatever, and he's like, yeah, but you can only do it once. You have to read a book, and like if I burn that book, you're out of luck. And so anyway, but throughout the spell thing, we were supposed to play this sort of backup role to NPCs who were much stronger than us to beat a villain that we couldn't beat. And through a series of terrible rolls, our guy that we were supposed to be helping out got like bogged down in minions, and this villain was like wreaking havoc, and we had to face him alone. And and so what we ended up doing was me and this sorcerer were alone with each other, cowering behind some barrels of oil. And I was like, I have an idea. And so we hurled this barrel of oil at the villain, and I cast Burning Hands, not thinking that I was also behind like 5 more barrels of oil. And the sorcerer, he got out, and I just like incinerated myself. But we beat the villain. And
I guess that's what matters.
This sorcerer like lost his mind and started like killing people on our team who had there was a whole bunch of politics, and he like went rogue, and our DM actually got permission and brought this guy back as a villain into our regular campaign, and he was just a thorn in our side from like that session on. He constantly appeared at the worst times to do the worst things. It was just such a memorable character.
Oh man, did he ever come back and burn your book?
No. See, the thing was like that wizard was long gone, and there were no remains left to find him again. It was a pretty rough end for him.
All right.
I remember, if I can actually jump in,
Yeah, go for
I
it.
remembered one of my characters. I've been trying to search for this one. So there was a good amount of time where me and some people were playing the Firefly role-playing game,
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
which was a good time.
Oh man,
Or
now
actually,
I'm
sorry,
thinking of
the-
characters that have played that one. Ah.
Yeah. So one pretty memorable character was a character named Fei Sun, which means the flying sun. And so he's the best way to sum up who he is. He's oh man, how best to put it? He's a psychopathic Zen Buddhist. So he's like a classic kind of like Zen Buddhist guy. Like he grew up on a planet called Shoje Downs, was in like a big monastery there and grew up there, and so he's like knows all about like he's knows what it should mean to be a proper Buddhist. But one of the main Buddhist teachings is that suffering is common to all, and we are all the cause of our own suffering. But he like twists that, and he's like, oh, so if I kill people, they caused their own suffering.
I'm just gonna start punching the air, and if you get in the way,
No,
your
but,
own
if the universe brings me into contact with you, like you must have brought this about. Like, so here we go.
Oh, I like
So
that.
he's this like really peaceful, kind person until like he feels like he needs to be fighting someone, and then it gets nasty.
It just reminds me. I just have this image in my head of that scene from The Simpsons where Bart and Lisa. I'm just gonna keep
Yeah,
swinging.
that's where
I'm
I'm
just gonna
going.
keep kicking, but then combine that with Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, what's it's the little boy in Korra, the little airbender. That's basically him.
Yeah.
I can't remember his
What's
name.
his name again?
Oh,
Oh, I can't remember his name.
Tenzin's son. I can't remember his name.
Yeah,
Anyways.
yeah. I know who you're talking about. But yeah, it's that. But like, if he was older and like more kind of malicious about it.
Oh man. Oh, I loved the Firefly RPG. That was a fun little system.
Yeah, man, the ship stuff was really
Yeah.
fun. Our ship was pretty much a character.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I found that was definitely the case with it. I don't know, and it would invoke more memories of Firefly, of like what happened around certain things, and it was just it was such a nostalgic thing. No matter what story got told, I loved the Firefly RPG.
oh yeah, it was fun just to like. I think it's just something about Firefly in particular that makes exploring those familiar spaces like really fun.
All right, any other characters from anyone else? Any honorable mentions of players that have built some characters before we move on?
Well, I will give one that was particularly entertaining. It was another Victoriana game, a different game, different group, but a buddy of mine put together a guy. The magic system is interesting in Victoriana, and it comes in different flavors depending on who you want to be. And you're also dealing with a system where true magic users have to get licensed. God forbid you're caught using magic and you don't have a license. So this guy's like, I want to make an unlicensed mage, and I want to make a rune mage, which basically means is that the power isn't like, you don't like cast a spell, you etch the power into things and then use it that way.
Okay.
And it's basically words of power. So like part of the cool system with that was that he could only learn certain words at a time, and he'd have to explain to me how that word would impact that item.
Oh, okay.
So, dude had a really cool story, but the one moment that really made me like it gave me the chills. It was such a cool character moment. There was just a fair in town, so I populated it with this very like heavily accented Eastern European family, and one of them was a guy who was this crack shot gunslinger. And he would challenge people to basically target practice. And they needed to get information out of him. But I told him, I said, you've heard this guy's reputation. He will not talk to anybody that he does not respect. And so this guy, Chris, looks at me and he goes, I'm going to walk up, I'm going to challenge him. And I'm like, okay, you do know you've never picked up a gun in your life, right? And he goes, I'm gonna etch the handle of the gun, and this was a great DM moment because I'm looking. I know the system. I'm like, yeah, but etching a rune into something takes like hours, and there's no way you're gonna be able to do that without him seeing you. But as a longtime proponent of the rule of cool, I'm like, all right, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to etch a rune into this gun that's going to give me the knowledge of how to shoot it. And I'm like, okay, that's too cool not to have it happen.
That's pretty sweet.
And so we go shot for shot, and it literally comes down to the last target. And he missed, and the guy ended up hitting it. And it was this really cool moment because like literally I had people like on their feet going, I can't believe it. This is insane. And like just everything about that moment was based on this character doing this outrageous thing, and that was kind of par for the course with that character. It was so much fun to watch him play that.
See,
Awesome.
I've had little moments with some characters, and like one in particular, it was a cleric, and they wanted to come up with their own religion, and I love mythology. So I'm like, okay, then you got to do it right. And so he comes back, and his cleric, I can't remember the deity's name that he made up, but essentially what it was that their order, they were seekers of knowledge, and so they wanted to know the secrets of all of the other deities. So they would pretend to be worshippers of other deities, and so they would infiltrate churches and essentially rise in the ranks of those churches to learn the information before leaving and then taking on a new identity and going to a new church to infiltrate. I'm like, I like this. This is a fun religion. I like this one.
What's that bird that like invades other people's nests?
The mockingjay. That's awesome. Oh man. Well, that kind of leads us into the stories that some of the stories that we always wanted to tell, but we never had a chance to tell because our players went left instead of right. And so we go over to you, Mike. We told some of our stories last week, and so it's up to you now. Tell us about the context, what they did, and then what they could have experienced if they were better players.
Okay, I'll start. I had a handful, and it's funny because I talked to the person. There's one person who's been in pretty much every group that I've led from years ago up till now, and I told her, I said, I'm going to be on this, and they're going to ask me for stories about how things went off the rails. And I said, and pretty much every story, either directly or indirectly, involves you. And she's like, I'll claim that. So I have a bunch of them, but I ranked them, and I'm gonna go with the showstopper right up front. We'll see if we get to the other ones, but there's a phrase that this group now knows that it just, that moment is forever etched in the hearts and minds of these players. It basically was that they ended up saying the phrase, "All right, let's ding dong ditch a murder cult," and
What?
Basically, the short version is that there's a group of people in there. There are two major organizations. They're not even religions because there really isn't a lot of organized religion in the Ninth World. This is a Numenera game.
Okay.
And there isn't a lot. There's occasional little things, but there's no major organizations. But there are the Amber Priesthood, the Aeon Priests, which are basically the idea of they're looking to gather in the artifacts, gather in the technology for the betterment of everyone. They understand it, they learn it, and they use it for the betterment of others. The flip side of that coin is an organization that calls itself the Convergence, and their big thing is that we take in technology, we take in the Numenera and the artifacts because we rule you people, and we're going to use all the power that we have at our disposal to make sure you know that. Well, in a lot of bargaining to try and get what they were looking for, they needed to invade one of these strongholds of the Convergence. And I made it very clear from the very beginning, you cannot do this guns blazing. This is a stronghold. These guys are fully loaded for bear. If you go in guns blazing, you will die a horrible, horrible death. And I even created a system that was a warning system. Like there was an alarm that there were ways that it would raise up and there were ways that it would lower down. And if it got too high, they literally could no longer complete the mission. They just had to run or get captured. So the whole time there's this growing tension of, oh man, oh those guys saw us, but we talked our way out of it, or oh my goodness, what did we find? And this was supposed to culminate. Now the Convergence, there's only as big as the organization is, there's only a handful of leadership in this organization. And so to completely ramp up the fact that these guys are in way over their heads, I said 3 of them have offices at the top of this tower. So in an organization that to find one of the heads is outrageous, they were coming up against 3. And I had all the scenarios going on. It was literally like they had to go up there, and depending on which one they were going to go see, it would have been completely different. One was all into potions and alchemy and explosions. One was all big in technology and robots. She had 2 automaton assistants that would come into the battle with her if they tried to start something with her. One guy was just, his office was wall-to-wall weapons, and he was a battle master. If they didn't talk their way out of him, he was going to take at least one of them out. Like, I had every one of them. I had layers of, if they fight this guy, then this guy might hear, and if this guy does, there was flow charts involved. like it was gonna be bad, but and it was gonna be worth it. Like any fight they got into, I was gonna make it worth their while, but it was gonna be intense. And what ended up happening was that they looked at their inventory, which is often what happens when a party's about to do something that completely derails everything. They looked at their inventory, and one of the things they had was it was called a pocket automaton, which is basically a little cube that popped out into a little, like, 2-foot guy, and he had the ability to use the Numenera. He could use ciphers, which is the technology, like, one-shot, powerful technological things. One of the ciphers that they had picked up was a thing called a rage bomb. And what the rage bomb does, it's basically a gas attack, and it just fills the room with this gas that throws anyone that's in contact with it into a murderous rage.
Oh my goodness.
I think I see where this is going.
I can't remember which one of the players said it, but it was just this moment of, wait a minute. We have a robot. And you said he can use ciphers, and I'm like, oh, I could just see it coming. And I'm like, yes, I did. I did tell you he could use ciphers. Like, can we just give him the rage bomb and tell him? Because he couldn't do, like, complicated things, but he could do simple tasks. And so they looked at me and they're like, can we just tell him to stand in the middle of the hall, and when all three of them were there, he should ignite the rage bomb? And I'm like, yeah, that's within the scope of what he could do. And they're like, oh, we're doing it. Oh, we're doing it. And so that's when the phrase, we're going to ding dong ditch a murder cult, happened. Because literally three of them got on the doors of the different offices.
Oh my goodness.
And knocked on the doors and then ran. One of the characters tripped, and so we had a couple intense rolls to see if they were able to pull him down, but they sealed the door behind them. And I'm just laughing hysterically as I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to describe this. And basically I'm like, you hear tap 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 as these people come out of their doors, and they see, and all of a sudden you hear this hissing sound as the gas is released, and then all hell breaks loose. And this battle that was going to have flowcharts and who they were going to do and how it was going to affect the rest of the campaign and all of this stuff ended with the three of them dead in the middle of the room because they ended up destroying each other. And I'm just like, I have very mixed thoughts about this, guys. Because
oh man,
you have, in one move, you have ruined hours of labor, but oh my goodness, was this awesome.
Oh, that's great. I love that one. I love what our players come up with plans are like. I see where you're going with this. This sucks for me.
this sucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seth, you didn't get a chance last week. Do you have any stories untold that you want to share?
You know what? Yeah, and this isn't even one I planned. It was actually something my players developed, and I was just like dying for this to come into fruition. But I had a it's probably redundant to say I had a power-hungry wizard in my party. But it seems like that. Anyway, he was super power-hungry. He found this Pearl of the Sirens, I think it was called, and basically it's a magic item that when you give the command word, it basically allows you to breathe underwater and move as though you were operating under a fly spell. So it just made you like Aquaman, essentially.
Right.
And and he picked it up and he lied to the party and told them it was like a +1 armor, and can I keep it because I need some armor? And they're like, okay. But the rogue, and this all happened in secret, so nobody knew what each other knew. But the rogue saw through his lie and realized it was something else, successfully lifted the pearl, got it identified, took it to a local magic user, and got him to make up a mock, like a complete facsimile of it. That was a cursed item that, given the same command, would turn into a 1,000-pound weight you can't let go of.
Oh jeez.
And put that and slipped it back into his bag, and he never knew. So he's walking around, and I was just like, I was like throwing lakes beside them just to see if he'd go test it out, right? And it was too funny. She's on her way out. The rogue was on her way out of the city, and she was like, "Wait a minute!" Goes back and buys a remove curse scroll and gives it to the cleric. Is like, "You need to hang on to this until I tell you to use it." And she was like, "I want to teach him a lesson, but I don't want to kill him."
It's an important distinction.
And the cleric had no clue. She didn't tell the cleric filament or anything. It was just like, just hang on to this, and when I tell you, you need to use it. And so I waited for months for him to use that thing, and it just like sat in his backpack and waited and waited. Oh man, it was so sad when that campaign ended. It was like, no!
So they never got to use it.
They never got to use it. I was like, yeah, and it never came, and I was like, man, I need to create an underwater adventure just for this moment to happen.
Oh man. So okay, then here's my question. How do you handle players stealing from other players?
Oh my goodness.
So this one worked out well because the mage was actually playing from Skype and everyone else was present. So I could do things with him behind their backs and they wouldn't know. And I could do stuff behind his back that he wouldn't know. And it was very easy. But quite often I'll do I will either do like secret notes or I'll take private meetings and I will delay them and kind of monkey with time passage so that they will think it's about something else. And we can talk about other things happening, which can get creative.
What about you, Justin? How do you handle theft from player to player?
Oh man, like I've had such bad experiences with players doing stuff like that like I go to so much energy to create, generally speaking, parties that have so much common backstory to one another that things like that are when they do happen, they're clearly of a like friendly nature. So then it's not as big of a deal. But then like in terms of actually handling it, yeah, I don't know. Generally speaking, I think I would just hope that my players would suspend player knowledge.
What about
like
you, Mike?
that they're
I'm a very similar boat. I work very hard to build a why are you guys together story before we even get started, because otherwise you always have that one guy who wants to go off and do his own thing, and it's never good for anybody. You always want to have that point of no, this is why we do this together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
I always found that if you put them in mortal danger, they start to trust each other really quickly.
yeah. And I will say that it depends on the group, really. I mean, that's going to be the overall GM advice for everything because it kind of works that way. But especially with something like that, there have been groups that if a player came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm going to steal this thing," I go, "No, you don't." Because that will implode this group. And I'm not talking in the game. I'm talking about the players sitting around this table will implode if you pull crap like that.
Yeah.
There are other groups, though, that I think that have a solid understanding of this is just a game. I'm playing the character. It's not me saying this is happening. It's this guy doing it. And at the same point, that understanding that at the end of the day, we're all here to have fun together. So no one's going to be that guy who literally ruins the fun for all of us. So if I'm in that kind of group, I'll be like, yeah, man, absolutely, we're going to do this. And why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I had a great moment of inter-party theft where a fighter and wizard fell down a cliff together. And the wizard went unconscious and the fighter didn't. And so he's about to heal his buddy up. And I said to him, I was like, "Do you want to take anything before you do?" And he was like, "Actually, yes, I do." And they just found some really valuable stuff. And so he lifted a couple things out of the guy's backpack, and the wizard didn't check his stuff till like 2 sessions later, and found his stuff missing, and assumed I had stolen it from him, and he was so mad at me forever. And then a couple sessions after that, he died. And I offered with the local priest to resurrect him as they would perform a resurrection ritual. And so they're doing that with the party, and they say, something's blocking his spirit. Someone here has a secret that must be revealed before he can come back. And the fighter had already taken this stuff, sold it, bought a bag of holding, and everyone was like, how did you get such an expensive item when we don't have that kind of money? He's like, I do things. And so, anyway,
I
so
do things.
I do
Yeah.
odd jobs.
so he confesses, he's like, I stole your crown. And the wizard comes back to life, and he just walks up and hands him the bag of holding and walks away. Oh, man, it was such a great moment. So that was the other thing I was going to say is I'll allow that kind of thing, but I make sure that there's a cost for it somewhere down the line, that you recognize that you don't get away with this stuff scot-free.
Yeah.
Oh man. No,
That's my.
go for it, Just.
I was just gonna say I like doing that a lot as well. Like even just like small like little indiscretions in a good party are super fun to bring around again later. Like starting a fight with the wrong people for the wrong reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the being able to bring those things full circle, like, you know, your actions have consequences. This, you know, you're like, oh, I could just fight this guy. Well, he had a family, and one day that son is gonna get older and powerful.
Or those 3 dudes in the inn that you thought were just regular guys were assassins, and now they're gonna follow you around.
Oh man. One of the things that I've been exploring is the idea of almost like good theft. So
Good theft.
yeah, because basically, like, the idea of theft is that you're sneakily doing something to another player and they don't know. And so the idea of having a character do positive things to another character and they don't know where it's coming from. And so I've seen a bard who just assumes that it's the DM who has like suitors because it's a bard, and of course she would have suitors, and so she gets all these random presents. Meanwhile, it's another character that's off buying things with his own money and like leaving them as secret admirer gifts for the other party, and they have no idea. They have no idea.
Okay. Sorry, this is totally off topic, so you can steer it away from this. But have you guys ever had to deal with role-playing romance?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Sorry, Kyle. Feel free to steer us in a different direction.
You know
if
what?
you want to keep us away from that.
If we could sum this up in 5 minutes, we could do it.
I don't
Okay.
know if it could be something. 5 minutes.
Go for it, Seth. Well, let's comment on it at the very least.
I have both played and DM'd where characters often use sex appeal to get what they want, and that can be. I've never had. Now I have played with a bard who was trying to seduce everything that he came into contact.
There's a horse in the barn.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Seduction.
not
I
everyone,
wasn't DMing
everything.
that, but I was. Oh man,
There's
was
a
like,
chair.
He was,
Seduction.
he was promiscuous, and it was quite funny because the DM just basically, it just became a joke. Like the DM just consistently set things that he couldn't reach, and he would just like hit people like the straightest guy ever, and just like, or it's like he'd get beat up, and he'd be like, help. We'd have to go rescue him, and oh man, it was insane. It never. I guess I've used characters, sex appeal to like distract enemies, before, and but I've never had, and I've always wondered what would happen or what I would do if like 2 characters started to fall in love with each other, like 2 player characters.
Yeah.
Because I've certainly run like Romeo and Juliet type stories for NPCs to interact and mingle in and whatever, right? Try and set up rescue things. But like player to player romance, no.
All right, Mike, what about you? Have you ever encountered romance between characters? Player characters in particular.
I can't say that I have, and there have been times when I've seen people kind of going along that lines, and I go, my big thing that I always set up when that I see that happening is I go, do you guys realize what you're doing? This isn't going to be just, roll for seduction check. This isn't going to be like that. I mean, there's plenty of times when I've seen characters do that, and I'm like, that's within your character. Go ahead, try it. But I'm like, especially when it's not just a player to an NPC, but it's player to player. I'm like, this is going to get pretty crazy here in a bit, and relationships are messy.
But I mean,
it'll be super cool if you guys want to explore that. But do you really want to explore that?
Yeah. No, and within that too, maybe comment a bit on like what dice rolls between player characters has always been a weird thing for me. For anything, and especially for social things, like I roll to deceive him. I'm like, this feels super weird. Like,
although, have you guys ever played what's that game? Fiasco?
Yes.
So Fiasco does
I've
that
heard about
very
that.
well.
I love Fiasco.
It does that incredibly well.
How does it work?
So I mean, in the whole setup of the game, you create a character, but one of the first things you establish is your relation to other characters. So you actually come up with the relationships and the parameters of it, and then at the end of it you go, okay, what would I be that would fulfill all of this stuff?
Interesting.
And we played in the Star Wars genre, and actually I was so the guy across from me was a sort of Han Solo type character, and he was trying to pull some heist off, and I was a Gamorrean female, it's like the pink guard that he'd had a one-night stand with that one of us regretted. And it was obviously him. And basically the whole thing, I was trying to I had 12 children, single mom, and I've tried to get this guy to be the dad and join the family.
Wow.
And he's trying to pull a heist off and ditch me as fast as possible. It was,
oh my goodness.
oh man, it was hilarious. Because we played it I was kind of aware that he didn't want to be there. So I was using the leverage of I have information that you need. Come for dinner. And he was like, okay. Oh man, it was bad.
I love Fiasco because nobody ever ends up the way they hope they will.
Oh no.
That's amazing.
Oh man, sounds like a game I gotta play. All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. When we come back, we're gonna go back to Communal Campaign Builder, which is where we build a D&D campaign as a community. And so we'll have Mike, Seth, Justin, myself. We'll be contributing, but chat. We want you guys to get involved as well. So feel free to intercede with that and add some of your own ideas and influence how we name things, because we're terrible at naming things.
Yeah, seriously.
So we need your help. So that's coming up. We'll take about a 5-minute break. We'll be back 9 p.m. Central. And I'll recap where we were, and then we'll start building our first city, I think is where we're going to start today.
Oh, sweet. Right on.
Woohoo! Hey, and we're back. All right, communal campaign builder. I've got everything all set up here. I want to make sure I got my names right because I didn't get that right last time. All right, so when last we set off, we did some creation mythology. The idea of how does this world come about if we're building our own world? We wanted to be part of the Forgotten Realms universe. And so we started with a female wizard who was quite powerful. So we're thinking like level 25 sort of thing. We ended up naming her with the help of chat and our guest DM Jordan. And we named her Tabris Dahlia. And so she's an elven wizard. And she was a crusader, a general for the Bahumut. Bahamu, Babumuhu, Babamama, Bahamut, whatever. So with that, and it was exciting because so she would serve in these wars, but being an elf, she lived lots and lots of time, and so she saw how these wars against injustice were just cyclical. And so that when you would fight on the side of the oppressed, only to find that in many years later that you are fighting on the other side because they are now the ones being oppressed, and seeing the battle and the swing of injustice going back and forth. She was granted a single wish for her great servitude, and her wish was swift. I want divinity. And so she took on some divinity shared by Bahamut, or however we want to say it, and she decided to take her divinity to create another mortal plane, a plane of existence where she could best the cycle of injustice so that it does not have to happen. Many centuries, many millennia go by as she's trying to craft this new plane of existence, but the problem is she can't do it. And it is such a difficult balancing act that she can't quite stop injustice even when she is the creator. And the problem is that now she's tied to this creation. She can't leave or it all disappears and is destroyed. So it's her gilded cage of sorts. So that's where we leave off. We've got this idea of what our world kind of looks like, a little bit of what she's created, but we need to have a place of starting point. So an adventuring party, they are going to come to this world that is yet to be named. They come into this plane of existence, and what? What is the inciting incident? What do they come into? And those are some of the most important questions when it comes to a campaign, because first impressions are important.
Mm-hmm.
And so Justin's been thinking all week, and he's got the solution ready to go for us.
Are you saying I have the solution?
Absolutely.
I actually no. I think we need to clarify how the party gets to the this because I think we had talked about it being a pocket dimension, right? Like
yeah,
the idea that it's not like a full-on like plane of existence as much as it is like a small version of that, a demi-plane or something like that.
So then what gets them there? What is bringing them there? What are some of the things that we could... I mean, there's the... there's always the somebody needs saving.
I think we had thrown around that...
Yeah, we had an idea.
That
95% of all
Bahamut
D&D campaigns start in prison or a tavern.
Oh, no, neither. This one would be a temple. But that Bahamut, I think the idea is that Bahamut like has lost track of this person.
Right. Okay, so and he is the ones that he's sending them to this plane, or do they? Because if he sends them to the plane, he kind of knows that this person's there, that Tabris is there,
yeah, I guess that's
right?
true.
I don't know, Seth. What do you got? How do they get there?
What are the rules on entering demiplanes?
Roll a d20.
If they don't If they don't have a way, like, depends. I mean, if you could have a party that knows how they got there. But I think probably if we're gonna drop Min, I think they should be sent. And the question is, do they know who sent them or not?
Oh.
Well, the other question is, do they know they're sent to this demiplane? They can be sent.
That could be, right? That could be a thing they discover.
They could be
eventually,
sent
right?
because they could be sent to go to this place. And, you know, granted, maybe it's the fact that we started off this thing talking about the fact that I'm gearing up for a Ravenloft game. But I like the idea that you start in one place and you start with one goal. And then before you know it, you're in this entirely other scenario.
Right, so you could have like sort of a red herring pursuit for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So they could like, what do you think? You could have like the answer to a call for adventurers to find a treasure or uncover a mystery or something like that. But it's actually like something that, I mean, it's like looking for the red J, right? The thing that doesn't exist that everyone's searching for.
What if it's like a really bad travel agency that's like
Yes.
where they're just scamming people and they're just sending them random play. Oh yeah, this is great, brand new land. You get to start over, start new, start afresh, whole new life, exploration and everything, and he just sends them there.
Yep.
Like
It's like they're like, you're gonna teleport you to a new land. It's like some mages in like Neverwinter or something. And they're like, yeah, it totally sounds great. They just throw them to some random demiplane.
The thing that struck me as we're talking about this is I almost want it to be like Army of Darkness. I want it to be you go, you get sent, and when you get there, you say these words, and then you're there. But that's literally the only information given. Go to place A, say words B, get to plane C.
well, it's Aiden in chat says that you have to know a bit about the plane itself or something with arcane print, and then use the demi-plane spell. So that they could get something like that, where it's suddenly like, oh, let's just read this. Oops.
Yeah, suddenly
you
start playing the audio recording of the guy reading the Necronomicon, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it could be something as simple as that, where that like the person is focused on keeping the gods at bay, and so like you guys are sent to investigate this particular individual, and you find in their notes some spell that would let you connect to them, and they're so focused on keeping these more powerful beings away from them and away from noticing that you're able to get in. Could be that.
Well, especially if you get to that point where you say that this wizard is forever locked with this creation, literally having this thing where there's almost this point of access where it's like, oh, where do we find them? Oh, we don't know exactly where they are. Oh, the last thing that they saw was this thing.
Yeah. Check their notes in their laboratory.
And then
Pretty classic.
Yeah, that is actually really classic. Or they instead of being tasked with that, maybe it just comes into their possession in some way, shape, or form. So, like they've won it in a contest, or they somehow, or they were sitting in the tavern and somebody drops this book out of their satchel and they leave.
Depending, and you can even do. I'm always a big fan, depending on how deep you want to go down this rabbit hole. I'm always a fan of the mysterious benefactor. That literally just an unmarked, a courier who has no idea who he's working for, was just told to bring this thing to these people. The letter itself is completely unmarked. There's no seal. There's no anything. It's just a letter. You open it up, and you can even maybe it's just the theater of the mind storyteller in me that's gearing up. It's just like you could have it like literally the text starts like burning across the page, like go all Harry Potter on it, and all of a sudden, and then VoIP.
VoIP.
Well, is the mysterious benefactor too cliche?
Oh,
It depends on how you want to go with it.
I think it's fine. Like it's the I think by design we're trying to create a campaign where you can throw this in whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So having something fairly generic is good, because then like even the idea of like what something that came to my mind was, okay, what if we had like some representative of Bahamut himself come and give this book, this tome or whatever, that's the link, to the party, being like, we can't get in, can you get in?
You know, and you know what? I like the idea of the book because it does, like, we can write like a soft intro for how a new party could get a book, but it could be open for old parties. They could get the book however they wanted, right? Like,
Yep.
oh, you've got the Festival of the Golden Seed, and this was the prize that you won, was a book. Oh, okay. I read it. You're in a new plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blam.
Okay, so we start with a book.
I like the book.
So however they get the book, we'll move from that. But where do they go? So Justin, you had said they start in a temple.
Well, yeah, like on the actual plane itself.
Yeah.
Oh, I think if I remember right, we had talked about there being a progression of creation, right?
Right.
That like they come into an area where it's just like full of like weird like abominations and like impossible geometry and like just things like that are clearly like someone figuring out their abilities. And then as they adventure along, things become more ordered, and then eventually they come to a place where there's actual like civilization and things that start resembling the real world. Like,
So do we start?
what do you guys think of that idea?
Yeah, Seth, Mike, what do you guys think?
That would be really interesting, like to understand, like, so when someone's designing a universe, essentially, like
Yeah.
what are the building blocks you start with,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And you can, especially because I mean, when we're dealing with an entirely separate plane, you can literally everything's on the table.
Yep.
You could even have, if we're going with a progression, you could even literally have the blank slate kind of thing, not like the Matrix loading program blank slate, but literally just like in like, almost like the salt flats, like that.
Yeah.
That literally there is nothing here. It is completely just void of everything. Like there is ground beneath you, but not much else.
Yeah.
And then you traverse into this, and the landscape starts to change, and it becomes that, you know, yeah, there are things here, but they're twisted. They're wrong because
Like a glitch in the physics would be really interesting and create like really
Yeah.
cool opportunities for encounters, eh? You know, like gravity around trees seems a little stronger than anywhere else, right? It's like just
Yeah.
like hadn't quite figured that out. It's like, yeah, that'd be
or
interesting.
have something inanimate start talking to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, or like or there being people who like when that are like 2D, and when they turn they like disappear, and like
Oh, you can get all sorts of stuff. Like you can, you know, especially because we're dealing with a religious environment. You could even have like this small little collection of monks, and you think, you know, the players will try to interact with them. They won't say anything. They won't speak, but they're like hooded or something, so you can't see their faces. And then you think that it's some kind of vow, but it's revealed they actually don't have mouths to speak. Like
or they're just not even intelligent. Like they just look
Yeah.
like people.
right.
And
Yeah, they're just
I think
statues.
it would be fun to play with the idea of like the creation getting more and more complex, like starting with the basic rules of reality, like yeah, okay, like this is how I make a shape, and so like the first area is just like random cubes and cylinders and like
Can we
and then like as you go on, like you only start encountering things that are actually intelligent, like
Well-
the way down the line.
and I think the intelligence should grow, right? Like I'm envisioning
Yeah, for sure.
I'm envisioning like almost the first city that they come into is like the first attempt, and so there's like it's like old school 8-bit city that you come into and you talk to the guard and he always says the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice. That's awesome.
yeah.
Yes.
I-
Yeah.
A
Because he's
character.
trying to get that spark of intelligence, but it's just like there's just nothing. Like he can only like put things in place. That's interesting. Sorry, she. This is a female character.
I keep, you know, I pull from everything, and so there's one character that it would obviously be ramped up to a fanciful level, but have you guys ever seen Hot Fuzz, the movie?
Oh yeah,
Yes,
totally.
Love it. Big fan.
The one character where all he ever says is "yarp."
Yarp. The guy who plays the mountain, or the hound, actually.
Yeah.
That's,
That's the same guy.
He's
Yeah.
really?
Literally,
Oh,
like-
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like literally the ability to only say like two things. It's either yes or no, but it's not yes or no. It's some weird non-word for yes and no.
well,
Yarp
some
or
little like
nerd.
mumble.
And at that point, you're also dealing with the fact that the party might have to actually learn how to translate what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't want to write my own language.
Oh, we don't have to write a language.
Oh man,
We can just make up a new language and say that the party has to spend X hours learning it.
No, that's true. That's true.
You have to observe this guy's reaction. You know.
Yeah.
But I
I'm sure there'll be. Okay. Oh, right. Sorry. I remember there were two things that I wanted to clarify before we get ahead anymore.
okay.
And the first thing is is this an adventure designed for level 1 or like what level is this for? Because it doesn't seem like a level 1 adventure to me. I'm asking that because it might qualify some of the things that. First of all, I think the scale is a pretty decently high level scale, and that'll also determine like what we're gonna actually throw in the people's way and what we're gonna focus on in terms of enemies and stuff too.
That's true. The
I
way they
assume
can
this is-
interact with things.
D&D 5 we're going with.
Yeah, we're in 5e.
Yeah, 5e,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
I don't know.
I
Should
mean,
we...
I
I'm
haven't-
Go ahead.
I'm
Mike.
always a fan of at bare minimum. Bare minimum. I don't in 5e. I don't even start groups lower than level 3. Because level 3 is when you unlock the things that really make your character unique. You're not generic fighter
Right.
A.
Yep.
You're, a battle master. You're not, you what the thing that you actually get to choose and make your guy unique happens at level 3. So I would say bare minimum that you need to be at that place. I mean, because unless you're really talking about guys who just stumbled into a demi-plane, which, as fun as that might be, I don't think that's what we're talking
No,
about
I
here.
don't think that's it.
It would be nice though to probably leave it low enough that the party didn't have planar control,
Yeah,
Right.
they
Yeah,
shouldn't have
definitely.
answers.
Oh.
so so they can't get out on their own. Like, oh, I know how to do this, no problem.
I think
Full credit.
demiplanes give us a demiplane gives us a good working ground because demiplanes are like owned by someone.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like moving between like primordial and material planes. It's like actually I don't know all the specifics of how you move out in and out of demiplanes. So I might have to look that up.
Well, I'm
But,
sure you could like. I'm
mean,
I'm
you can
sure a
always-
high-level druid could easily get out of a demi-plane. And then the question is, do we want a party that's low enough that they can't?
I mean, you can always because you're the DM, you get to do this stuff. But you can always say like, ordinarily this would work, but this time it doesn't.
True.
Right? Like something is wrong with this one.
That's true, because if we are messing with the physics, we are also messing with the magic.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
and that's
Yeah,
certainly
and if
possible.
something is broken, then
right, maybe they're stuck there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing that's broken. Huh. Okay, so then, if not level 1, which I agree with Mike, I hate starting campaigns at level 1. Level 3 is where it gets interesting. Is level 3 still too low?
I think so. I think, like, I'm imagining at least level 5 or 6. I would say.
I like level 6 because level 6 is your first class unlocking, right? Like your first extra ability from your class feature.
Yeah.
Like your specialty sort of thing. So I don't know. I'm game for level 6. I don't know, Mike. What do you think?
I think it sounds good. It's a fine place because you're dealing with people who have been around the block a couple times. They have some stuff at their disposal, but they're far from super competent. Like they definitely have a lot of room to grow at that point. So I think it's a decent starting spot.
All right.
Yeah, that seems good.
I don't see any recommendations in chat, so I'm gonna iron in level 6 as our starting point.
Yeah,
okay.
feel free to weigh in, chat.
Okay, so if we're starting at level 6. We got this idea of the book. They get transported to essentially these salt flats. Seth, you had mentioned the idea of like gravity around trees, these oddly shaped trees.
I was actually considering. I was thinking more about that, what I would do, and I think actually, because I've worked with like strong magnets really messing over your steel users, but like magnetic wood would be fantastic. So all your wood stuff is attracted to other wood.
Oh. Okay.
And
So, like, but
a
it's
large
so
tree-
it doesn't attract metal. It's just wood attracts
it's
wood.
wood
other
on wood.
yeah.
Interesting.
Okay,
I
this is
like
what
that.
this is. I'm gonna cross systems here for a little bit because, I mean, obviously when we there's a thing that I love that is in Numenera that I think obviously you're changing it because it's not nanomachines in D&D. It would be something else. It would be some kind of magical entity. But there's a force that happens in Numenera which is called the Iron Wind. And the Iron Wind is basically a bunch of just berserk nanomachines that run through wherever they're going, rewriting the genetic code of everything they come into contact with. And so you
Oh no.
so literally like it will turn air into ice. It will turn things into molten lava. Like it just everything it touches is fundamentally changed. And I'm thinking if we're dealing with this newly created space, especially if we're dealing with a transitional thing of I have nothing to I have things that don't work properly to I have civilization, this rogue presence that will randomly show up
Ooh.
and fundamentally change a portion of what's out there. You know,
That'd be really
change
fun.
a thing, change a place, change it. When you're you're dealing with magic in D&D, so that could literally be anything. It could either tie it to a person or a creature or something, or it could literally just be the madness of misshapen reality.
Yeah, well, actually, no. Like, I think that might be our answer to who's the villain. That
There you
like,
go.
what if there was something like that, but it was intelligent.
Yeah.
Like, and it was both like chaotic, but also like, like plotting against this person and their plans.
If this thing
Was-
has come into being from somebody who sought to create, it would be a natural foil that the enemy would be somebody who wants to twist and not necessarily destroy, because destroy is too easy.
No.
Yeah,
what-
yeah. Oh,
but-
definitely. It's just change. It's
It's
change
just
into something
change
else.
and warping.
Well,
A
typically.
table would be interesting there for the DM to use, so it would be different every time.
Ah.
So we could come up with possibilities, and I mean, yeah, you know, you can trade like whatever you want to set. If you want to set triggers, or let the DM like choose that, you know.
Well, I was thinking in
Yeah,
terms
may-
of its origin, Well, actually, Justin, you go ahead. I'll put a pin on my note there.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say pin that in. I kind of want to pull us back to like let's like set the opening. Maybe no. This is too fun. I want to talk about the villain. Let's talk about the villain before we do that.
Okay. So,
but at some point, I want us to actually like intro scene. Like, what do they see? What's around them? Like, get down to brass taxes like that.
Paint that
but I do love this idea of this villain.
Okay.
Like, a lot.
Here's my theory. You have this effectively a demigod who is trying to eradicate injustice and through building this demi-plane, but the problem is that that's essentially impossible. And so the idea of balance comes into play with this. And so this dire desire to create something of injustice creates the balance of something that is horrifically chaotic. And so the villain is her own creation. It is her own. It is the antithesis of who she is inside this plane.
It is the result of her own hubris.
Yeah.
Nice.
But see, and that would be interesting too. Like for the villain to sort of at the end, at least to create some sort of sense that something unjust has been done to them by their creator. Right. That maybe something is fundamentally wrong with them that they can't control.
Interesting.
What do you mean? Expand on that, Seth.
So if she's created by, it's a demigod?
Yeah.
That created this? Yeah. So that the demigod, like, in her error or something, broke this being. And so they must be evil. And to somehow convey that to the party. Like, if the party at the end of defeating this thing realizes they had no choice but to do what they did, and that it was actually this great injustice from the demigod to it, right? Leaves her out of control again, and leaves it open for her to like try and figure out what went wrong.
Okay.
Interesting. What came to my mind when we were talking about this person is that this could be potentially like so the theme I think overall is that this person created this plane to try and experiment and see if they could do it better and basically create people and create living things that would break this cycle and actually live in peace. But seeing that the cycle seems to repeat itself no matter what, this person actually develops a love for their creation and actually has a like almost like a sad kind of sympathy for what she's made. So it's not even necessarily that like she's kind of almost given up on justice, but just has kind of settled into being like, man, like I couldn't escape it, the people on Earth couldn't escape it, now these people here can't escape it, and so I at least have to stay here and help them stay alive, because if I leave, it all comes crashing down. But how this villain, I imagine, could potentially fit into that is that this, whatever this thing is, could have been her attempt at making something more than human.
Yeah.
It could be her one big regret that she loves too much to deal with.
Right.
Well, yeah, and
like
like
one
something.
of the things, if you're trying to create a world without injustice, it's like she's trying to simplify life, and the just missing that the complexity is also what is creating the beauty, right? That you can't get it without the complexity, without maybe the messiness.
Interesting. So the villain could be just seeking to simplify reality.
Yeah. I almost wonder if the demigod is, though, right? In her attempt to create, is trying to simplify existence. But maybe she creates things that are like, maybe the villain in a product of a less complex mind is just like driven by one particular facet, whatever it is, right? Or, and I mean, this is sound a little too like iRobot, but just like recognize, like starts going ham on this is unjust and must be eradicated. This is unjust and must be eradicated.
Mhm.
Oh.
See, I kind of my hope is like, and maybe this is just my flavor. You guys can feel free to weigh in on it. But like, one of the I was really hoping that both like this demigod character and whoever our main villain would be people who are really hard to hate.
Yeah.
Like
I would
they're
like that.
they're not like, and that they're three-dimensional and intelligent. Like they're not, they haven't I can see it going in that direction, but maybe even that the villain is just in a different space than their own creator, that they're like, they haven't seen the cycle happen enough, so they're like, no, we can do it. Like the god, like this demigod is wrong, we can do it. Like, it just literally doing her story over again. Like
The thing that I'm kind of resonating with is that whole part where you want a villain who isn't completely off base. You want a villain who has a point. And it makes me almost wonder if we have it so that the villain is something that is created by this demigod person. Almost with I could almost see it being with the intent, like this being is put in there to right wrongs.
Nice.
That the creation of this thing, this individual, was that person was to go around and has the ability to literally fix things.
Yes, dude, that is
to get
so
into-
dope.
To get into the source code of reality and make it right.
But
Yes.
maybe it has like an adolescent maturity about it, right?
What do you mean?
So it's these
Maybe,
things like
maybe.
black and white, right? Rather than understand. So I mean, because you can make mistakes doing that, right? Going in and righting wrongs and not foreseeing like the consequences beyond that, right?
Or maybe what we could do is the villain can begin that way, and we can actually watch the villain go through a maturing process as the PCs fight it.
Well, I almost
in which they might not want to kill it at the end.
Well, that's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
goal. My goal would be when they get to the end, they uncover the full story, whoever the villain is and the demigod and the whole story, and they have the chance to decide who they think is wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the thing
Right?
the thing that I'm the image that I'm thinking of every time I think about this villain is that the idea, there's that meme of, you know, I took my daughter to the river and she saw that the fish was drowning, and so she made sure that the fish was okay and that it could breathe. I almost have this vision of this thing coming in and saying, what I'm doing is
Yes.
helping you. You don't
Yes,
understand. I'm
dude.
helping you. And all the while it's literally like ripping them in two.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And then that is so great. That is so great. I really, really love that, Mike. And just that builds so heavily into this thing. So this thing starts, whatever it is. I'm also imagining, like, you guys watch Big Hero 6?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because of
Uh-huh.
your micro machine thing, I'm imagining like those.
I've been
black
thinking about
things,
that,
like
the same
just some
thing.
like crazy thing made out of it. Like, I don't know. We can shop that a little more, but that's just what I'm imagining right now. But that can eventually lead to like a point where this thing comes in conflict with this demigod character directly, because it's like, you created me for this purpose and you don't even believe in my purpose anymore. Like, or something like that. I don't know.
Well, you could even build to that place where the thing, the party might come across it, not like in a battle sense, but in a, you know, to take from video game tropes that, you know, the villain is right there, but you're down here and you can interact with them, but you can't really just have this thing literally be sitting there having this existential crisis of all I wanted to do was make it better.
Yeah.
And just literally watching the world crumble around, and just like all I wanted to do was make it better.
What if
So
that's
how come the demigod can't deal with it herself?
I think it's that, or what comes to mind right away is that she's come to a place in general with her whole world as it is currently that like, that things are cyclical, and so the best course of action is to kind of stand back and love and be and like try and like almost like guide people through then the how it never ends, and just like
A
I-
sort
I
of
haven't-
loving apathy.
yeah, a loving apathy, almost like of like I have to be here still because otherwise you all die. And I think that the demigod would say that like they're convinced that everything that they've made are real, like they have real
Yeah.
value and whatever.
Almost like the idea that, you know, I know that I made a mistake, but I won't make another one by leaving.
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, like so not intervening is for them is like, yeah, because things are going to kind of go their way anyway. What was I gonna say? I don't know. I'm trying to think of what this thing looks like. That's what I'm struggling with right
Well,
now.
I like the idea. So going back and tying into how does our opening scene look when they first come in? The idea that, you know, you have the salt flats, you kind of walk through. Maybe there's some odd things that they see along the way, but the first thing that maybe they encounter is presumably the villain having an existential crisis.
I'm imagining that
You know.
the crisis is like a 10th hour kind of thing. Like
Okay.
you're in the demigod's like house, and it's like falling apart because the person like recoded all the walls.
What if?
But
what if then you see the villain doing something like the recoding? Like I want
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's got to be like the big introduction where the first thing they see is like, oh man, this thing is destroying things. We need to kill it. Kill it with fire.
I was imagining that instead of introducing it as a villain, we introduce it as something totally peaceful. That like they come in, they there's like a longer kind of experience
Yeah.
of like, oh man, like whoa, this world is like wonky and weird, and like have them walk through a big open flat where they have to like navigate gravity wells or somehow like something weird, environmental puzzles. You'll enjoy that, Kyle.
Yeah. What if?
But then eventually they come to a point where things start getting normal again, and he's there, like fixing some stuff, like way out here, like way out in the boonies, like at the edge of the world, kind of thing. And that's where they first meet him, and he's just like taking all janked up like wood and like other stuff and just kind of fixing it. And they like maybe even we can try and like get a situation where they interact with him and somehow like, I don't know. Like maybe even are part of pushing him towards like helping with justice or something else, like them actually pushing him into it.
What if they were to? Because I'm thinking of like in Full Metal Alchemist, you have the. They did the wonderful scene where they had the kid and the chimera and the sewing alchemist, and it was like super. They ingratiated you to this character. You loved this little girl. You loved her dog. They were wonderful people, and then all of a sudden, you know, they combine the two, and you find out the father actually killed her daughter.
We're
Yeah.
bringing up that monster.
Yeah, but almost having this situation where it's a little bit like that, where they meet some character who is just a random NPC at this point. They have some sort of interaction, and then this peaceful wave comes, and they change, and it's a peaceful change, but they no longer remember the interaction that they just had with them. You know, so they note that something has fundamentally changed inside this person. And it felt like a peaceful wind, a soft wind that came by, but this person fundamentally changed. I'm not sure if I'm okay. You know, so it's almost like almost a conflicting view between those two kind of descriptions. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well,
So I'm trying to
like,
understand what you mean by the wind.
Well,
Like, are you
okay.
thinking of keeping what he was saying about like the literally a wind full of these things?
Well, I'm
Or-
trying to figure out like how do these things actually change, and I'm actually thinking of like Stephen King's Sliders, where they had like monsters that came and ate 5 minutes ago, and but almost like something just kind of washes over and things change as it washes. Like there's no physical being; it's almost spiritual and ethereal than it is tangible. I don't know. That was just how I'm picturing it in my head. But
It kind of
maybe that's the process that, like, I think it would be fun to tie it to a particular individual so that we can track with that one person and follow them around.
They do see this individual, but it feels as if a piece. I'm trying to go with that peaceful idea that you had mentioned, which I like that the change is not like eradication, where it's like I incinerate everything and then reform it, where it's violent and visceral, but it's calm. But things change. And it could have been somebody
It's
that
calm,
they liked,
but can be horrible.
yeah, like it depends. Like they just had a good conversation with someone, and they just agree, and then all of a sudden, they're changed, and that they're no longer interested. Like, no, we're good. See ya. Nothing bad. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. No, I like that. What comes to mind right away is like something like a Warforged, where it's like a living construct that can have like other cool magical things that are like integrated into it or something, so that it could like somehow use these like magical things to like interact with the things around it to change them. What do you guys think of that?
That'd be cool. Like some kind of construct would be a good idea.
Construct enemies are also just really fun.
One thing that would be interesting, especially if we're going from that place of emptiness, is I forget, there was a race in 4th edition, which was like people who were literally crystals.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember the name of them. It's been so long since I played that edition.
Anyways, go on. Where are you
shard mines. Shard mines.
Yeah. It's just that idea of, I almost have this thing of like, if the salt lands were where we started, where there was nothing, and if we're thinking that this thing is the first kind of creation that the demigod put in to like make sure everything runs smoothly, I almost have this understanding of it's this creature is built from the stones and the rocks of the land around them. So it's this being, I almost imagine like a series of stones held together by energy in a form that looks vaguely human.
Almost like Pinocchio. You're like, I want
It's
to be
really
a
interesting to have,
real
like,
boy.
to have like their tour guide become their villain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So do you think it would be worth, the question is, would it be worth the party being present the moment that things twist? Right? Like the moment that villain becomes the villain. Because that would be
I was
to go on to be assigned to escort him to go right or wrong, and he writes it in a very odd way, right, in front of the party.
Yeah, that could work.
I like the idea of tour guide.
Or even that we can like set up like a whole like structure or something where like we can try and like hopefully set it up so that they are responsible.
That would be interesting.
Like,
yeah,
create a scenario where like something is happening and like the easiest solution might be to get him, or I don't know, something like that.
Because one of the things I was thinking, like, to spend some time with them before they become the villain would really help the party to resonate at the end with them.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay. Okay, so if we start with is the villain the first person they encounter?
I almost wonder if they should meet the demigod and be like introduced. But that was the question. My question was, are they going to meet the demigod at the beginning, at the end, at all?
That's a good question.
I think for sure at the end. I have no idea otherwise.
Yeah. Because if it was like, if the thing is, and you can kind of go either way with it. It doesn't really matter. But you can drop them in and let them discover, or you can drop them in, let them discover a bit, and then get an introduction of like, this is my world, this is what I've done, and you know, I mean, because she's already got a policy of sort of stepping back and looking, she doesn't have to give them all the information. She could just give them what she wants to guide them in the direction.
Yeah.
There's part of me that thinks that if we do want to go with the villain appearing to be friendly at the beginning of things, and being in a place where they are assuming that this thing is on their side.
Mhm.
Almost have this thing kind of painting a picture of the demigod that is not necessarily accurate.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an
So they start to
unreliable.
think things are not as they seem.
Like,
Hmm.
because again, we're still under this understanding of I was created to do this thing. The demigod no longer believes in this thing, thus I am opposed to that.
Right.
Right.
What if?
Or like, could that be an evolving thing though? Like,
Yeah.
could
Right? No,
they,
yeah, I don't think it should be like a boom. This person's wrong, but to just have the villain be this thread going with them, and as he's saying, as he's starting to question his own place, he's starting to feed them an understanding of this demigod so that they haven't met. So the players will have to deal with the fact of, is this person really giving us all the info and
Okay,
accurate, and then when they finally get to the place where they meet the demigod, they have to come to grips with, especially because you said you want to get the players to a place where they don't know which side is right. So if they've been walking with the villain,
Yeah.
if they've been walking with him, hearing his side of the story, hearing his perspective on all of this, and then they get to see the demigod, it becomes a lot easier because they've walked with this guy, they've talked with this guy, they've seen his perspective. They then have that choice of, do we buy into what he's saying, or
Mm-hmm.
and at that point you can literally have a kind of forking campaign. If they side with him,
Yeah.
X happens. If they side with her, Y happens.
See, in my mind, the siding between the two, that's almost like final battle.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah, and like, or it might even be post final battle.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, we did the wrong thing.
If I can, this is what I'm imagining from our conversation in terms of timeline. So the party arrives, we spend a bunch of time, like I think a good amount of time introducing them to the wonkiness of the world.
Yeah.
And then at some like point they meet this character and he's friendly and they begin adventuring together, and then they start seeing a lot of the world and they come to the more civilized places together. And then the party together with this villain character, all of them together meet the demigod, and it's in the meeting of the demigod that the villain character begins kind of their descent, where they they've been out in the world doing the thing that they were created to do, and in this scene where excuse me, where the PCs like bring them in to meet this person who made them, and they talk about how all these cycles are futile, and like I've decided to just stay here and be and like keep sustaining the lives of these things to allow them to just continue doing these cycles, but it's ultimately pointless. And that like starts for that villain character their spiral downward. But even after that, the party and this character can keep working together, keep doing things together until they like disappear and start doing their own goals.
What if that incident is the villain trying to write them and rewrite them?
Like themselves.
Yeah. He's like, well, this is what I was created to do. Like, don't worry, it won't hurt.
Like to the party?
Yeah.
When?
I don't know. But that could like if that's where that little divergence, or maybe that's one of his things, is that that's why he's with them, is that they're off, they're wrong, they're not a part of this world, but I can't change them.
Yep.
And so we're assuming it's a he. He's with them for that very purpose.
I'm thinking.
But yeah, that idea.
So, Aiden in chat says, I would think the idea of having a villain wanting to accomplish the same thing as the demigod originally wanted, but it is slowly going on to a more violent version of what the demigod experienced and learned. The villain is more stubborn, and when he learns the lesson from the demigod, he cannot accept it and goes full rage mode. The thing is, at this point, he has grown so powerful because of how the players motivated him to pursue a righteous world. What do we think of that?
Well, I do like the idea that, because this being is lesser than the demigod, so it does not have the divine knowledge that this isn't going to work. So that makes sense to me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that could be fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ian. All right, so just to recap, just as we're about to conclude here. So here's what I got. We didn't talk about Opening City at all. We went to Villain, which is just as great, and I love it. So basically,
It's a cool villain, man. Thanks for that, Mike.
oh man, should we name the villain? Should that be our last thing today?
I guess we need to do at least one naming an episode now, right?
Yeah, I think so. All right, so I'm going to explain where we're at. Mike, you better start thinking of a few names here of what we're going to name the villain, all right?
Yeah, Ray Sarian says, I definitely like the same original goal as the demigod, but I feel like rather than violent, maybe just more confused by the fact that things aren't working. Ooh, that's fun. That's more childish as well.
Yeah, I like that.
Diet Skittles. Sorry man, you missed it. Tune in next week, I guess.
Absolutely.
We're still doing it, though. We're still here for a while.
Yeah. Okay, so to recap where we went, so they get a book. However they come into contact with this book, they do. And at level 6, they enter into the world because they chose to read the book, because they're silly and parties do that. While they're there, they enter into these giant salt flats of just almost nothing. When they finally decide to pursue in a single direction, they start to notice weird, physiological things that are wrong with various things. Trees that don't quite go straight, they crook over, they have weird gravity wells, and we'll explore that a little bit later. But we came to the idea of well, then what's wrong with the world? And that's where the villain came in, and it sounds like we're really siding with this idea of childishness that was created with the same original goal, but because of lacking in experience and divinity, can't suddenly figure things out in that regard. So yeah, I like where that's going. I think we got a great simple thing. I think next week we need to figure out exactly the walk up to meet the first thing. So what are the traps? What are the, what does this world look like?
Bust out
What are
our
those
DMG.
What are some of the physical, like wood, magnetic wood? I really like that one.
Yeah. Did you write that down, by the
Yeah,
way? 'Cause
I've got that.
Yeah.
Magnetic wood would be fantastic.
Diet Skittles, this is for 5th edition. We're
Yeah,
we're planning
5e.
to make it for 5th edition and then release it to the community.
Yeah. All right, so I think that concludes everything. So next week we'll have yet another DM, another Jordan, not the same Jordan we had in episode 1. He's going to be joining us. We'll talk a little bit more about the communal campaign builder, and I guess we'll do our opening incident. We'll go through step 3 of Dungeon Masters Anonymous, and we'll figure out all the rest and talk about all the stories that got missed because of our players. Mike, I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us on the show for tonight.
Absolutely, it was a blast.
Mike,
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike.
you get one opportunity. Tell us where we can find you.
One shot, one opportunity.
Yeah, don't miss anything.
The biggest place you can find me is at our website at inroadsministries.com. That's INN roadsministries.com. The reason it's my one shot is because pretty much you can find a link to everything else there.
That works. Justin is the Coop13 on Twitter. He tweets all the really cool stuff. Seth, I don't remember. Do you do Twitter?
I have a Twitter, but I don't know what it is anymore.
It used to be the Egg, didn't it? I think they're getting rid of that now.
I logged into Twitter once, and I haven't touched it since.
Yeah. Actually, follow us at OK Let's Play Games on Facebook. That's the best place to get a hold of us.
Yeah, we do that all there. And yeah, so we'll be back next week. We'll continue with Dungeon Masters Anonymous. See you guys later.